Hey everybody, welcome to our Museum Store Sunday event with Mr. Willie Cole and the folks over at Popcorn Movie Post. I believe it's called Movie Posters, right, David? Tell me if I'm wrong.
Products, Popcorn Custom Products.
So we are thrilled to have everybody here. So we are joined by Whitney Richardson, our associate curator, and Willie Cole, the artist of the hour. So I'm going to let them kick it off. If you have any questions during this event, just put them in the chat box and we will get to them. Take it away.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to all our virtual visitors and those that are perhaps in the museum store today. Like Lindsay said, my name is Whitney Richardson. I'm the associate curator at the Asheville Art Museum. And I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by artist Willie Cole. Hi, Willie. We haven't met before. It's nice to meet you. Good, thank you. Joined by Willie Cole to talk on today, this Museum Store Sunday, and to talk about his artwork, as well as his partnership with Popcorn Custom Products. And David Graveen, I see you're here too. Hello, nice to meet
Greetings.
you.
Yep.
And their launch of the line Black Art Matters, which you can see. David, I can't see your sweatshirt, but Willie, we can see the top of yours there advertising. Oh, there you go. Both wearing it and advertising them. I thought I'd start with just a little bit of a background for all of you on Mr. Cole. He attended Boston University School of Fine Arts and studied at the Art Students League and received his BFA from the School of Visual Arts, both in New York City. His artistic career began in the late 1980s with his adaptations of American domestic objects like the iron that we'll see today, and transforming those objects into traditional African artistic forms and artifacts of belief. He has become best known for his assembled mixed media sculptural works, his paintings, and drawings of iron scorch marks. The steam iron is probably the single most important icon of Cole's work, visual vocabulary. Its symbolic reach extends from the domestic role of women of color to the Yoruba god of iron and war, Ogun. The imprint of the iron pointed up references African face masks in his work, and pointed down, it takes on the form of a shield. By scorching canvases with the iron, Cole is creating patterns reminiscent of the Indikra cloth found in Ghana. His work is found in permanent collections of over 40 major museums, proudly including the Asheville Art Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the High Museum of Art, the National Gallery of Art, Museum of Modern Art, and the Newark Museum of Art. And a little background on you there, so everyone can be introduced to you as I am today. And if it's all right, I want to talk to you both not only about the artwork we have in our museum, and then about the works that you're doing together for the museum store. So I am going to share my screen. And hope that this works. All right. Everyone should be able to see one of Willie's works in our museum. We have two works by him. This is from his woodcut prints. And let's see. Got the next slide here. Woodcut on Kozoshi paper. We have an edition 6 of 16. If everyone's familiar with this, this was up when we first reopened the museum after our renovation in November. This one's called Stowage. Sorry, I think I completely skipped the title. And then this artwork is on view now in our collection hall gallery. This is Sunbeam Male Ceremonial. And in both cases, you can see the use of irons here. And Willie, if you'd like, if you're okay with it, can I ask you some questions?
That's why I'm here.
All right, great. Now, you're both doing this in each time zone. Is that right today?
Yes, I'm in Eastern time zone.
Okay, so are we the first one of your visits today?
This is my first time today using my voice.
Okay, well, so far it sounds good. I wanted to ask you questions about your artwork in general in our collection, and then of course Black Art Matters, and have David join in with us wherever he'd like. Something that really interested me in learning more about you and your artwork as we put it on view in the gallery, and talking specifically about your iron motif, because that's what we have represented in our collection. You said that you didn't choose the iron chose you. And I wondered if you could talk about that a little.
Yes. Well, I feel it's just rooted in my core belief system that when you are full with faith in anything, that thing can be attracted to you. So I was full of faith with creativity. I believe that my creativity would always manifest the things that I need in my life, but also for my art production. And the iron was just part of that whole journey. You know, I saw the iron on the street, and when I saw it, I didn't see an iron. I instead saw an African mask, even though it was a run over proctocylic steamer. I wasn't sure what to do with it, but I did photograph it and hung those photographs in my studio. Back in these days, it was all a bunch of Polaroids. And it began to talk to me about the possibilities and potentiality as an icon to express the issues that it discusses in my work now, issues of the African diaspora and domestic servitude.
And I wanted to just say, Lindsay, keep an eye on our chat box. If anyone joining us today has questions, please type those into the chat box, and we will be sure to ask you those as well. Well, I know something really, for me, my background is a decorative arts historian. So something I really like about the iron itself and all domestic objects is this ability to immediately be recognizable by people. It can bring people together. We've all, in this case, used an iron. You can sort of begin stories of your own experience. But then I really also like your layer of you telling your story using this common domestic object and really expanding my understanding and the stories that come to my mind when I think of it.
Right. Well, in my day, people ironed a lot more than they do now. And my great grandmother worked as a domestic. So there was always ironing going on. She died in 1993 in her 90s. She might have been 97 or 98 years old, I recall. But also, I was in the middle school, we called it junior high back then, in high school during the Motown era, and we had to be clean. We had to have a sharp crease in our clothing. So I had a lot of iron experiences from that. I actually enjoy ironing, even though I don't iron much nowadays. But when I travel and I'm in a hotel, I usually have to iron my shirts because I want to have a nice, crisp white shirt on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've had a personal relationship with the iron through my great grandmother. And the funny thing is that up until 1987, I was a painter and an illustrator, graphic designer. But I had a whole lot of broken irons because, when I was a kid, I was a male in a society of females. My mother, grandmother, great-grandmother were all divorced. All my cousins were females. So through all that female energy, there were many broken irons in my life. And somehow, and I'm going back to like 10 to 15 years before I even made sculpture, I saved them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all part of the iron choosing me. The journey was like, I'm looking for something to do, and something to do is looking for me. And that something was the iron.
Right. Well, you had the foresight there to save them.
I even found the scorch burned into the floor of my studio in 1989 that I didn't put there. I'd been living in this loft, and it used to be a sweatshop. I'd been there for probably 7 years by the time I saw the scorcher on the floor.
All right.
So it was kind of like I don't know, I could call it a psychoactive experience, or I could call it a spiritual experience, but it was definitely something that came together at the right time.
Right. Yeah, and like you said, you have to be open to kind of see that and process it quickly enough to make it your own.
Yes, that's the key to creativity is openness. Sometimes knowledge is like putting a period at the end of a sentence. Like if you say, I want to sit in that chair, all you ever see is the chair. But if you just see an object, then there's a lot more possibilities. You get to see the wood, the metal, the plastic, the shapes, the colors, all undefined, rather just reacted to, responded to by the person.
Right. I wanted to talk a little bit, in the case of the two works that we have, and I know you've done more than just prints, but we have two prints by you. I wanted to ask you about the scale of them. Why are they so large? Is it you pushing your own boundaries, your technical skills?
No, if I have boundaries, they're definitely not related to size of art production. I would say the stowage piece is that size is because at some point in my life, and even occasionally today, I have issues with illusion. Even though I'm working as a professional illusionist, being an artist, I want to keep things as real as possible. So I didn't want to reduce the size of the ironing board to make the print.
Right.
So all those objects are actual objects embedded into a piece of plywood and then inked and printed.
Mhm.
That's why it's that size. The other piece might be closer to what you said initially. I had an opportunity to work at this print shop going out of business called Quality House of Graphics. Before I worked there, I had a little Polaroid copy stand with a little camera on it, shooting like tabletop stuff. When I got to their studio, they had a copy stand that was like 7 feet tall. You could put big things under it. So I started making these large prints that were just the image of the iron itself. And so I was in the mode of large prints when I did the piece that you have there. Plus, I'm a big fan of the cinema, and big screens have power. TV, small screen's not bad, but that big screen, gives you a physical relationship to the art, not just a perceptual relationship.
Right.
So I like that.
That's so funny. I was just going to look up the size of them. The
Yeah,
stowage is 49 by 90, by 95 inches, and Sunbeam Male Ceremonial is 61 by 44 inches.
right.
And the paper is so big. I'm always absolutely like pulled right into it. I honestly never even thought, oh, the ironing board and the irons are all life size. But I think I probably would have noticed if they were smaller than normal, right? Like it's just such a normal thing I see on a weekly basis after I do my laundry.
Tell you, normal will kill you. Be careful with normal.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about this Black Art Matters project with you and David. I think having you in the museum is something that we're interested in. Representation matters in the museum. It also matters in the museum store. And why don't you two talk to us about Black Art Matters as the project and bringing it to museums across the country?
Yeah, well, if I can go first, David, I'll just
Sure.
say that the times that we are living through inspired this concept for me. And my reasons go back to the 70s. I remember when there were only two Black artists exhibiting in Soho in New York. One was Robert Colescott, and the other one was Jean-Michel Basquiat. They were very visible in Soho in the late 70s and early 80s. So that led me to create the phrase that Jesus Christ, in terms of Black artists, Black artists, Jesus Christ died for our sins, Bob Marley died for our hair, and Jean-Michel Basquiat died for our careers. And I think both those things are very real in terms of awareness of self, in terms of Black people and Black artists. So the Black Art Matters statement is really a celebration that we have gone beyond those 1970s limits of being one in a bunch. And it's worth celebrating, but it's also worth educating, because the climate of this past summer kind of devalued or diminished the value of people of African descent in this country. And every profession and every person, of course, is important. But I felt the need to emphasize the fact that Black art is important. You know, I mean, it's hard enough to break into that business, 30, 40 years ago. I mean, nobody can imagine how challenging that was. And I'm sure for artists before me, like Benny Andrews and Herbert Gentry and Omar Bearden, had even a tougher time. So for the next generation, this is to educate them, to also let them know that their creativity is important. So that's what it's about for me. It's about informing, educating, celebrating, liberating, just getting those minds in the right place, not just for people of African descent, but for people around the world.
David, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your part with popcorn?
Sure. Our company typically works with artists, but most typically we work with museums preparing exhibition-related merchandise for the museum store. And today we are kind of celebrating Museum Store Sunday, which is trying to shine a spotlight on the importance of the store in the general operations of a museum, how critically important it is to convey and spread the message through merchandise that can take the collection and the museum experience home with the members and the visitors. So in the past, we've worked with Willie Cole when he's had exhibitions, have helped design products. And I say help because, as Willie has kind of mentioned, he is a graphic designer. And while we have a fairly good design team, this is a rare opportunity where Willie has inserted himself in the design process and has overseen almost every element. And what I like about this whole project is that it is driven by Willie. He is fairly eloquent, and he kind of came up with this mission statement for the Black Art Matters movement that he kind of described, but I like. And it says, it's an affirmation of the importance and presence of Black art socially, academically, culturally, and institutionally. It teaches and celebrates the Black artist's contribution to the human experience. And so we were really, I think, honored to be a part of this project. So it began this summer, and it has been kind of a slowly growing program that we've begun introducing primarily to museum stores nationwide. And this year has been a challenge. Museums, like many industries, have been hit very, very hard. So typically museums and my company are running at less than 30% of normal, right? So the volume has been slow, but museums from Asheville to Boston to LA have begun understanding the relevance and import of bringing kind of this initiative into their store to begin help spreading the message. So this is just the start, but one of the things that I also kind of want to highlight is the generosity. Willie has been a part of the marketing effort behind this and has participated in panels like this for Milwaukee Art Museum and others. And it's really a credit not only to talk about his work, but to also donate so much to a charitable organization called Wellspring Hope. So Wellspring Hope is an organization based, I think, in California that drills and provides safe water for Niger, right? And Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world. And this, again, was at Willie's direction. But 1 in 7 children die by the age of 5 in Niger because of the lack of clean water. 96% of those don't have any access to sanitation. So one of the things we like about this is 10% of the proceeds from the sale of all merchandise is supporting this initiative, and every dollar that we donate is matched. So it's a real feel-good opportunity for our company. We're really pleased to be working with such a generous and talented man like Willie, and we're doing something we believe in and feel it's socially relevant and you know, all good. So thank you for having us.
Absolutely, we're happy to have you today. I see Willie left us, he's back. Everyone that has registered and is here with us today on this Zoom meeting has been entered to win a print signed by the artist, and I believe it's like the one over your shoulder there, David.
Yeah.
Willie, will you talk to us a little bit about the creation of this work and the use of orange too? I'm interested in that.
Well, I would say that the creation of the work goes back to the adaptation of the scorch as a symbol. And I've used it so much that it just seemed to be the appropriate, you know, symbol or icon for stand-in for me, really, as opposed to having my photograph portrait on the back, to have my symbol on the back. And of course, the scorch is a, what's the word? It's not a double entendre, but it's just a metaphor for so many things. But in the real and more obvious, you know, it's something that's hot. And orange is kind of a nice color to represent the heat of the scorch, which could also speak about the heat in the world today, you know, the social heat, the unrest. But it is a collaboration, and David and I and his designer, we've worked with a few different colors, but our color currently is orange.
It's orange, yeah. We have a question in the chat box. Who chose the charity that 10% of the proceeds go to? It was Wellspring Hope. How did you come about choosing that?
Well, I was already making donations to that charity before this project began. I attended one of their fundraising events in Beverly Hills, and I was impressed with the event. When I got back to my house and went on their website and saw the videos, it was definitely a tearjerker, you know. I mean, the videos, they probably have lots of videos. The one I saw at that time showed a bunch of children standing around the well, and it documented the first time that water just came out of the well and how they all freaked out. They were like, "Oh my God, we're in heaven," you know. So that image just broke me down, and I decided this is my charity.
Yeah. So we do have in the store today, in the Asheville Art Museum store, as well as online, if you go to our website, there are t-shirts, mugs, advocacy stickers, pins, and exclusively today, it's all 10% off for Museum Store Sunday. And then again, remember 10% of the proceeds of the sales will be donated to Wellspring Hope. Let's see, we have another question. Oh, this is from our director, Pam. Is your Sunbeam Mail ceremonial a self-portrait?
Huh, it's funny. There are a couple of really funny stories about that. So yes, it's kind of a self-portrait. I remember really being admiring Cindy Sherman and Matthew Barney for having themselves in their art in various costumes and guises. And I was really into that a lot, seeing that. So I wanted to do that with myself. But I had been making kind of like these pieces here, just kind of scorch paintings and drawings that look very textile-like. And I've been speaking about a mythological or a make-believe society, at least in the art, called the cult of the domestic, or the people of iron. And I said, well, what would those people look like? What would they, you know, how would they appear? So I decided to do that piece based on that desire. But yeah, that's me on my 50th birthday, in my birthday suit. And then with Photoshop, I was able to dress myself up with some iron sole plates.
Right. Um, a lot of your work now has to do with water bottles and using them sculpturally.
Mhm.
We had a question about this. Is this because of your interest in this charity?
No, the water bottle sculptures came first. As I said, in the 70s and early 80s, I worked primarily as an illustrator and graphic designer. And then I got an opportunity. I can skip a few years and give you a long story. But in '88, I became the artist in resident at Studio Museum in Harlem. And I've always been a person who's very into nature. So I wanted to do something that would speak about the natural elements. And at that time, I thought of the earth, the air, the wind, and the fire, as corny as it sounds. So I began to try to explore each of those things. So that desire for fire was fulfilled when I found an iron on the street. Even though I didn't know it at that time, it eventually came to me. And the water bottles kind of did it for water. But the catalyst for it, other than the desire to speak about the elements, was an opportunity I had to exhibit at a place called Grounds for Sculpture in Hamilton, New Jersey. It's a big, beautiful sculpture park started by the Johnson Family Foundation of Johnston Johnson. They have 3 or 4 galleries, and then they have a huge outdoor park. So when they invited me, I thought I'd be in the park. But then when I go to a meeting, I found out they don't have any budget for me, and I'm not in the park in one of the galleries. And during that meeting, I was drinking a bottle of water. So I'm squeezing the bottle, and I realized the bottle has all these lines and crevices in it. I said, wow, this is like origami, the bottle, origami in plastic. So I played with that, for that meeting and afterwards. And that night I actually dreamed about a chandelier made out of water bottles that had a picture of Buddha in every bottle, like the old political statement, a chicken in every pot, that kind of thing. And that's how it started, that meeting and then the dream. And just like the iron, the more that I use it, the more it reveals to me.
Mm.
So nowadays I think of the water bottle as a vessel of life that is potentially dangerous for the environment, because the passenger, which is the water, is great. But the car, the bottle, does have some problems. And for me, because I like to be conceptual as well as contextual, the fact that the water bottle is plastic, and plastic is an oil derivative, and oil and water don't mix, all those things just fuel ideas for me constantly.
Yeah.
It didn't connect with the charity, but I would say it was the other way around. I actually went to the charitable event because of my sculpture, because of my interest in making art out of water bottles.
Right. It's interesting how life connects you in those ways.
Yeah, I mean, they invited me to the event. I don't know where they saw me or found me, but they invited me to the event.
Yeah.
So,
We have another question. Is there any relationship between Black Lives Matter, the organization, and Black Art Matters merchandise?
there's no connection with the merchandise. The obvious connection with the language is the language itself. I mean, I saw a shirt that said Black Fathers Matter. And I think the deeper connection is the need to shout it out, to make it known.
Mm.
But I guess everything is political, but this is not to me, is not an overt political message that has a dogmatic agenda. This is, I said, an expression and a confirmation to inspire.
Right.
Which is Black Lives Matter has those elements too, but it has a more, a more hammered on agenda. Black art is in many museums, so it's validated. Of course, Black people are in the world, but in the cities and places where there's so many people being killed, it needs to be restated. So the connections in the language mostly, I would say. We're not, incorporated together.
Right.
We're not a subdivision of or anything like that.
Are there particular artists that you studied as you were coming into your own vision of art that really had a big impact on you?
Well, I've been studying art since I was a little kid. I started making art when I was 3 years old. So as a little kid, it was all about Hanna-Barbera cartoons and Disney cartoons and Max Fletcher cartoons. In high school, it was about Salvador Dali and the guy who did the Beatles' Yellow Submarine album cover, Peter Max.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. But in college, it was about African art. I had a great teacher, Rosalind Jeffries, who taught me so much about African art, African thought, and African aesthetics. And because that was in the 70s, it was also the time that I call the awakening period for Black Americans that began in the 60s but continued on to the mid 70s, where we began to recognize and identify more with our lives before the slave trade. So that art inspired me a lot. Once I got out of college and became a professional graphic designer, I was inspired by almost everything. I always loved Hokusai, a Japanese woodblock artist, who also inspired Van Gogh and the artists of that era. So I'm a big fan of Monet and Van Gogh. Gerhard Richter I like, Ansel Kiefer I like. There's just so many. I'm inspired. Inspired means in the spirit, and I live in the spirit. So everything inspires me.
Right.
Everything inspires me.
Someone was asking, where were you born and raised? And when you said you've been studying art since you were a little boy, when did you know you wanted to pursue art?
I was born in Somerville, New Jersey, which is just like it sounds, because it's Somer, so it's really like a sleepy little town. And it's not a big city. It's like a very, very little town. I lived there till I was 3 years old, then I moved to the big city of Newark, New Jersey. And it was at the age of 3 that my family decided or discovered that I was an artist. I don't know why they didn't spot it earlier. I don't remember what the activity was. But I'm told that at 3 years old, my mom came in the kitchen and found me copying drawings or copying cartoons from the Sunday paper. And that's when they realized that I was an artist. And from that point on, they would send me to the Newark Museum of Art for classes on the weekends. And there's this college of, what's it called? The Newark College of Fine Arts. I would take classes there after school. And I would spend the summers with my grandmother in Somerville, and I would do art in the park in Somerville. And then by the time I was in high school, I went to a high school called Arts High, which was the country's first high school for the arts. And so it's always been a part of my life. It's like kids escape in the various things. I was escaping to my art. I didn't hang out as a kid a lot. Maybe a lot of artists are that way, or at least some, but I was pretty much in the house drawing most of the time. If I was outside, I was looking for things to make installations in my room. Like I made a real military camp for my GI Joes. Got dirt from outside and twigs and made the whole setup. I would make costumes for my GI Joes, like non-military stuff, so they could date my sister's Barbies. So I did all this as a little kid. So it's always been a part of my life. And if I didn't make a living at it, it would still be a part of my life.
That's great. Oh, someone's asking the question. Does the iron symbol bring you a joyful feeling?
It gives me a joyful feeling when it appears in a finished work of art successfully. And success is kind of hard to define, but success, I would say, is, I know they say success is the day-by-day realization of goals and ideals important to an individual. So I guess that's a good definition for what success means for me. So it does bring joy. But if I just saw one on, on the back of on your pants or something, was a mistake, I wouldn't get excited about it. But on my own canvases, like with this here,
Mhm.
I was excited to see that because it was something I had never done with the iron before. A new shape, a new motif, and the illusionistic quality of it appealed to me. So yes, art production in general brings me joy.
We have another question here. Dr. Jeffries wrote African American History, a Journal of Liberation. Do you see a connection between her work and ideas on liberation and your use of the iron, and what domestic work meant for Black women?
I don't know Dr. Jeffries' book. I was her student like in 1971, and before she wrote that book, so I can't really compare it on that level. But what was the last part of the question again?
Do you see a connection between what she taught on ideas of liberation and your use of the iron, and what domestic work meant for Black women?
Without having read her book, I would have to say yes.
Yeah.
Domestic work meant for Black women. I grew up with Black women who were domestic workers, so it meant the ability to support your family. It meant your ability to be independent from a relationship or a man or an individual. It meant the ability to support your children. Despite anything that might be demeaning about it, the rewards, I almost said out trump that, but the awards, are elevated above the things that are demeaning about domestic work.
Right.
For me as a little kid, the fact that my great grandmother was domestic made me a well-dressed little boy, because she worked for a wealthy family who had kids my age, and I got all their hand-me-down clothes. If it hadn't been for that, I would have been a whole different look as a little kid. All of my clothes had the guy's name in the back, in the collar. I remember having several pairs of shoes. And as back in those days, in my life anyway, like in the 60s, kids had 2 pairs of shoes and 1 pair of sneakers. Shoes for Sunday, play shoes, and then your sneakers. But because my great grandmother was a domestic, I inherited all of Bobby Wynn's old clothes. So I had lots of shoes and everything. So we felt good about that.
Yeah.
It wasn't demeaning at all.
And do you see using the iron symbol as a way of reclaiming it too, and you can put your own meaning and words behind it?
Do I see the iron as is that question on my screen? Do I see?
No, that just came from me. Is it a way of reclaiming that object?
I wouldn't. Well, I know reclaiming is one of those words that exist in the art world with modified meaning and stuff. So I guess I could say yes to that. But my choice would be, it is more of understanding. The iron speaks so much about our history, and I mean American history. Maybe even history of civilization. The fact that we've even had the idea to get rid of wrinkles is like revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
So that's represents our level of growth and civilization. But it is an invention that was made out of need, and it evolved, just from a hot rock to a piece of steel to a piece of aluminum. So it's a powerful object. Even today, it's almost superfluous. Everything is wash and wear or wrinkle free. But we had to go through the iron to get to this point. So it's a valuable symbol to me. It represents home. It represents fire. And now in my work, I've added other meaning to it just based on logic. I remember that I made a list of all the things that the iron suggested, whether it be physical, mental, or spiritual. They could even add scientific to that. And that list included everything from happy suburban housewife to enslaved Africans, to gods and everything. So it's a powerful thing, lots of potential to this day. I would say from 88 to 2000, the iron was my main motif in my art. And then I had to show at the Museum of Modern Art of all the things I made at that time. And only in the past few years, I brought it back into my work. And it's brand new. Like I said, I never did anything like this before, this kind of symbol before. But now that inspires me to do more.
Yeah. What are you working on now beyond Black Art Matters? What's your next step?
You can see where I'm sitting now. I'm sitting at a table covered with black high heel shoes. So I have a commission to make 7 crowns out of shoes for a fashion show in Tokyo. Okay. So that's what I'm doing today and probably the next few days. But I work on a lot of things at once also. So I have a Dutch barn, which is basically a 2-story barn. And the second floor of that barn is a shoe studio. So up there I have like some animals. I don't know what they are. I thought they were going to be like these food dogs you see in front of Chinese restaurants. But now I think they may be chimpanzees. They're made out of shoes. But the armature is a chair. So that gives you a sense of the scale. Mm-hmm. But I'm also working on these ironing boards like these. These pieces are, you can see from this one that it's just an ironing board. So I'm doing a bunch of those. I started doing those last week. They've led me now to want to do like just bigger square canvases with scorches.
Are those behind you screen prints, or are you actually printing from a real iron onto?
Printed from a real iron. Uh-huh. Yeah, real iron.
And we had another question here. Do you ever feel like you're so aligned with the iron now that it's limiting, or you're moving on to working with shoes, or just bringing more things into your repertoire?
Yeah, bringing more things in. It's not limiting because, you know, nothing is limiting except for your own thoughts. So it's not limiting at all. And to feel like the door is closed just means take a break and you come back and it's brand new. So no, and everything I do with the shoes, I learn from the iron. So as I work more with the shoes, I can go back to irons and understand it more. Because I've made a lot of sculptures out of irons too, out of the parts. And the shape of the sole plate of the iron is very similar to the front part of the shoe. So, you know, the heel is the handle of the iron. So it's, you know, it's a growing thing that will be growing the rest of my life. The thing that's coming back into my life that hasn't been with me in a long time, though, is painting. You can see the painting behind the iron boards there. So I did those a couple months ago. That's a painting. It's like 9 feet tall by 5 feet tall.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I thought that was printed fabric behind you.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think because I was a graphic designer, and in high school, my major was fashion design. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my drawings and paintings look like they should be like textile patterns or curtains or something. So, but that painting, if you can see it without the boards in front of it, is about the energy that's in the air. Like we live in a world of waves. We got Bluetooth, we got Wi-Fi, we got G5, we got AM, we got FM. There's so many waves, plus general sound waves, microwaves. So those strokes represent the waves. And if you can see it close up, inside of each color stroke, there's a word written.
Oh, okay.
So it's about communication.
Oh, that's great. Well, we have a few more questions, and I could just sit here and ask you questions about your work all day. I don't want to keep you too long. I know you've got other museums to visit. I want to encourage everyone to visit your website, to visit our website. And Lindsay, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about how the winner of the print is decided.
The winner of the print has already been decided. We're working behind the scenes. Phyllis Critchlow, you are the winner of the Willie Cole print. We have it in our store, and we will begrudgingly give it up because we really wanted to keep it. It's a beautiful print, so we are thrilled.
I am so lucky. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That is so cool.
Well, we are
I'm a
so
winner.
Thank you so much, Willie Cole and Whitney and David, for today's event. I think everybody has really enjoyed it. I have put the link to our museum store in the chat box, and we do have all of Willie's Black Art Matters items for sale. We do have some in-house as well. Anything we don't have, we will drop ship. So please do some shopping, support Willie and his amazing movement here. And Willie, thank you for taking time with us today. We have so enjoyed it. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you all for joining us.
I wanted to ask someone did ask, can we buy this print of the iron behind David somewhere?
No.
I was afraid that was your answer, but I wanted to be sure.
Willie did a special release for early adopters of the program into their stores. And so it was a very limited kind of print run, but we did save one for this occasion. But one of the things that I did learn today from Willie that I never knew of was the story about his hand-me-downs. And one of the things you probably can't see on the website is all the apparel has a hang tag, a Willie Cole hang tag. So you'll all be wearing a Willie Cole hand-me-down of sorts, right? So it's all, you know, big picture, circle comes around, right? So it's, again, been a great day, and thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Willie.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful Sunday.